Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who's invited me here today to speak. It's such a great honor. خليني بالبداية أترجم بالعربي ولكن السفراء دائما يطولوا في كلامهم فما عندنا وقت يعني ممكن يكون ساعة أو ساعة ونص إذا أترجم كل شيء إلى العربي. And I'm sorry that I don't speak very much Kurdish. I would like your support. Whenever I try to speak Kurdish in this speech, could you give me just a little bit of a round of applause? So no, I haven't started yet. Let me say, Slaw Lishari Halmat Kurbani. And I'm delighted to be in Paytakhti Roshanberi. Very good. I've been thinking about what to talk about today. I did think about talking about politics, but I think that's a bit boring. And I did think about talking about my country, about the United Kingdom and its science and its arts and its history, but I do that all the time. So I thought I would do something a little bit more personal. We have a tradition in England that the person who tells you the truth about life is not your father, it's your uncle. So when you are about 18 or 19 years old, or maybe you're at a wedding and your uncle, who may or may not have had a whiskey at this point, will sit you down and say, "This is the truth, my son." And maybe today, just for 10 minutes, you will allow me to become your uncle. لمدة 10 دقائق أصير عمكم. Now, so I'm going to take off the ambassador's suit. It won't go any further than this, just the tie. That's the sort of thing you wake up from in a nightmare, isn't it? That you find yourself standing in front of 1,000 people and you've taken your shirt off. Right. So I'm going to tell you about... Is this working? Is this working? I'm going to tell you about... Is that... Anyone help me with that? I'll start by saying I'm going to tell you about some mistakes that I've made in my life. If I told you about all the mistakes I've made in my life, we would be here until the winter. But the way I know about these is because when my daughter went to university, which is 2 years ago, I wrote down some advice for her in a card. Now, for all of I'm going to talk to you now mostly, the people, mutakharijat wa mutakharijin. If you think, particularly the girls, if you think that your tough Kurdish father, who is here today with his big mustache and he's a big tough guy, if you think that he didn't cry when he dropped you off at university 3 years ago, then you're wrong. My daughter doesn't think that I cried when I dropped her off at university, but that's because I got out of her bedroom before I started crying. It's going to work, is it? I managed to get out of the bedroom before I started to cry. And that's exactly what happened with all of these tough fathers out there who pretend they didn't cry when they dropped you off at university. Now that is how I still see my 20-year-old daughter, and that's how they're still looking at you. So be sympathetic to your father on this day, because that's my little girl. She is now 20, but I still imagine her to look like that. Now, mistakes. I've made so many mistakes. Each one is an opportunity for learning. I haven't always learned the lessons, but I wrote her down a few, and here they are. I've got 4 lessons for you. So first of all, These are quite simple, but they're hard to do. So the first one is to turn outwards, concentrate on the other person, not on yourself. Now that is a very simple thing to say. And of course it is a moral point, but it is also a behavioral point. So we know the moral point. It's rooted in our religions, it's rooted in Christianity, it's rooted in Islam, to put the other person first, to think about a bigger and better cause. And all of the psychological studies say you need a cause bigger than yourself in order to live a fulfilling life. So you need to look outwards. Now I'm not a communist. I really am not. I'm not saying don't be rich. If you want to be rich, khalas, go and find that. But you need a purpose in life beyond that. Otherwise, to go to an English example, many of you will have at least seen the movies of Lord of the Rings or the Tolkien stories. Don't become the dragon. Don't become the dragon that sits on the pile of gold, thinking about the gold, counting the gold, worrying about the gold, and with nothing else out there in their lives. So turn outwards. I also think this is a behavioral point. It makes you so much more interesting for the other person if you're not talking about yourself. I am telling you about mistakes I've made here. And so if I give the example of two famous British politicians, one of them was winning in the First World War and one in the Second World War. So David Lloyd George and Winston Churchill. Both remarkable men, both remarkable conversationalists. Churchill told fantastic stories. Lloyd George asked fantastic questions. And somebody who knew them both said, if you spend 15 minutes with Winston Churchill, you leave thinking that he is the most interesting person in the world. If you spend 15 minutes with David Lloyd George, you will feel that you are the most interesting person in the world. So my first one was to say, look outwards. The second one is, again, very obvious but very hard, which is to say, don't only listen to other people's views, but actively seek them out. So my country and my culture is very divided at the moment between people who don't listen to each other, people who don't understand the alternative point of view. They think they do, and then they can dismiss it as evil or wrong, but they haven't actually listened first. Now, I think the professors here would say, if you write down what you think in an essay, you get a B. If you write down, if you show in your essay that you've read what the alternative point of view is, and you have moved beyond it, you might get an A. And I think there is a lesson in life there. I've got a Kurdish bit. Get your hands ready. Du aql layak aql bashtra. Another way of thinking about it is if you want to defeat your father or your mother at the dinner table with those arguments that you've been having since you were 14, you might want to listen to them first. Now, the third one is to acknowledge your emotions, but don't be ruled by them. Now, it's very difficult for a British person to give anybody lectures about their emotions because we're so terrible at talking about our feelings, we don't do it. That's why we go to the pub. That's the reason to go to the pub with your friends, is to have the excuse to talk about your emotions because we're so terrible at it. So I'm not saying to ignore your emotions. And I'm certainly not saying to ignore it about serious matters. And this crowd here has known far more serious things than I ever have done, has known trauma in their lives, which I have not done. I don't think my society has had any experience that could compare to what has happened to you in the last 50 years for a very long time. So I do not say ignore those emotions. What I do say is do not mistake them for reality, because they are different and your emotions can pass. You can wait for them to go through you. or things can look better in the morning. Now, my final one is to walk towards your fears, but walk towards them slowly. Now, we're all afraid of something. Some of us are afraid of giving a speech in public in front of 1,000 people. Some of us are afraid of exams. Some of us are afraid of a scary professor or a scary teacher. I was afraid when I arrived in Iraq of giving my first TV interview in Arabic. I was really scared about it. And I wanted to rush at it because I wanted to stop feeling scared. Because feeling scared is uncomfortable. I don't like feeling scared. I want to feel happy. I want to feel relaxed. So you can either run away from your fears or you can run towards your fears, and neither of those are good. What you need to do is look those fears in the eye and walk towards them slowly. Now, if you can think of what is it in your life that you're afraid of, in your heart, and you've all got something. It's certainly something that I have got wrong over the years. Either I have rushed at my fears, or I have avoided them. Okay, I think it's time to put my jacket back on. Okay, I'm becoming the ambassador again. I'm no longer your uncle for 10 minutes. What I would finish by saying is, don't give up on that bigger picture. Don't give up on your city. Don't give up on Kurdistan. Don't give up, I will say it, on Iraq. And what a city this is. I've always enjoyed coming to Suleymaniye. What a people you are. You're splendid and rebellious and creative and stubborn and difficult and celebratory people. You love life and you give so much to the world, as does the Kurdish people and as does Iraq. The depths of your culture and the generosity of your spirit, the strength of your resilience is an example to everyone. So I wish you all the best of luck. I hope you're proud of what you've done. I hope you'll be even more proud of what you will do next as you set off on your adventures. Now, some of you may even become politicians. Some of you may even think that the advice that I've given, walk towards your fears slowly, don't be ruled by your emotions, listen to other people's views, and don't be a dragon. Some of you might think that could be advice to politicians in Iraq today. I couldn't possibly comment on that. I hope you're proud of what you've done. I hope you're proud of what you will be. I'm going to do Kurdish again to try and finish. Ba hiwai sad kutun bo hamwa.